Hello champions and future champions. Hello ChessMood family. GM Gabuzian is here with you, and in this video we are going to make the coverage for the daily lessons for the March. This is the first position, and this is a daily lesson test for constructive thinking with nice look. In this position it's white to move, and we need to figure out our idea. Those of you who tried knight f3 are going for the nice look in this position. The problem is this knight on f3 is not doing much. As well, whenever black will be playing h5 and g5, trying to make g4 in future, our queen will be covered with this knight, so it's not preventing this g4 further moves. Instead of knight f3, white is supposed to play differently. First of all, let's figure out on which side of the board we are going to play. On the king side, black is having a space advantage and a little majority of the pieces, so it's not going to be working out. Meanwhile, we have space advantage on the queen side. That means white needs to push, and as this is a King's Indian structure, white is going for b4 and is just planning to play c5. Trying to gain space, weaken this pawn, open the c file, trying to take it, and making a pressure on black's position on the queen side. If after b4 black is playing b6, we are still playing c5, and after takes, and takes, now we are going to be using our knight on d2 on the queen side, just playing knight b3, so it's no longer required on the king side, and knight f3 move at the beginning was a mistake, because we need our knight over here. So after knight takes c5, white is going to be gaining a very nice game. Let's now change the position, guys. This is a test position for the daily lesson exploiting unconnected rooks. In this position is white to move. We have strong pawn on d5, very nice square on c6. And as well, there is a black rook unprotected on e8 square. So combining all of these thoughts, we're instantly figuring out that here we just can play knight d4. Also, we're attacking this pawn on h5 with a tempo. And after knight f6, we're playing knight c6 and rook b7. So what has happened, this rook now is in a very bad position. And our knight is on a great outpost. But we need to continue here, and white is even playing f4. The idea is that if black is not taking and going knight d7, we can capture the pawn on h5. Or if black here is deciding to take, we play bishop f6. The rook on e8 is again unprotected, so black has to take, queen e1, and g takes f6. You may say we gave away bishop pair, but it's not at all correct, because after g takes f4, white is having a wonderful position. This black rook is in a cage because of this knight on c6, this is a very bad bishop, black has doubled pawns, our queen is closer to the black king, and as well we will be able to activate our rook through the a8 square. Super many benefits for white and big advantage. So with the beginning knight d4 move, white is using the hanging position of rook on e8 square. Let's now change the position again. This is a test position for daily lesson total blockade strategy. In this position it's white to move, and let's think how white is supposed to play. We are having pawn majority on the queen side, meanwhile black has pawn majority on the king side. Also, black has a space advantage here, and if we allow black to play h4 or f4, it's gonna be very unpleasant for our king. So, first of all, white is playing with h4. The queen cannot go to g4 because it will be trapped by knight e3. So black has to play queen to h6. And now black again wants to play g5 and continue strong attack around our king. But luckily, rook on e7 is unprotected and white is having f4 move. The idea is that e takes f3 is not possible because we will take rook takes e7. So for this reason we can play f4, closing the king side, blocking all black's ideas related to g5, and as well in future we'll put our knight on e3 and stop all black counterplay related to e3 advancement. Meanwhile, white is keeping the pawn majority on the queen side, and in future we will prepare b5 advancement, creating a strong passed pawn. Here, black can try knight g4, looking for e3, but we're again blocking this with knight e3, and rook takes e3. So now black's all counterplay is blocked. Meanwhile, we're going to be having a very active game on the queen side. So with h4 and f4 idea, white is totally blocking all black's ideas. Let's now change this position, guys. This is a test position for a daily lesson Akopian's important rule. In this position, it's white to move. Probably we need to take our king to a safety because it may get under some checks on g1 square. But if we go now king h1, black will play knight e5, and either we take or make some other move, let's say knight b3 takes queen d3 and bishop e5, black will have a very nice blockade in the center. This bishop will be very strong, controlling everything, and our pieces will be very passive. As well, we will not be able to use black's king bad position in the center. So, for this reason, at the beginning, instead of playing this king h1 move, white is firstly doing one very important thing. Playing e5 in this position, sacrificing the pawn. Let's say, after bishop e5, we're now playing king h1. You may say, what has happened? We have just gave a pawn and went for the same position. Not at all, guys. Now, we are going to be having very strong, important square for our knight in the center. This e-file will be open as well, so we will gain a huge game against the black king. Sometimes our pawns are obstacles for our own pieces, and getting rid of them is very smart. So in this position, white is gaining a very nice game. After bishop d4, we can play knight d4 with a tempo, and after some queen b6, white just can play queen e1, creating many threats and activating the pieces. So with the beginning e5 idea, white is giving this pawn and making a lot of game against black king. So have in mind, I will repeat myself one more time, that sometimes we need to get rid of our pawns. So let's now go to the next position. This is a test position for a daily lesson exploiting entry squares. It's black to move here, and both sides are fighting for the b file. Pawn on a5 is hanging as well. And the best choice here is gonna be to protect this pawn at once and as well use a very important square. Black here is playing rook b4, very strong move. This rook is supported by both of the black pawns. If white is deciding to take, we are just taking and creating a very strong passed pawn. Meanwhile, all white pawns are gonna be blocked and weakened as well. This bishop on g2 will not be doing much in this case also. So after rook b4, white is not taking and trying to play queen d1, but eventually after rook fb8, white has to take because now there are two rooks of black on the b file and white can no longer hold this pressure. After rook b4, black can be taking both ways. Rook b4 is absolutely nice. We are controlling b file, attacking pawn on a4. As well, black can choose with c takes b4 move, creating a passed pawn and trying to push it in the future. So with the beginning rook b4 move, black is taking very important square and as well taking advantage over the b file. Let's now go to the next position. This is a test position for the daily lesson meeting attack with counterattack. In this position is white to move. The last move of black was pawn g4. If we decide to take, after bishop g4, black is going to be having very unpleasant pressure in our position. There is no longer pawn on h3, now the g file is opened, and as well, after some kind of d5 move, black will increase the pressure with knight d4 or knight e5. So, for this reason, at the beginning, instead of taking h takes g4, white is playing differently, and playing d5. The idea is to remove this knight from this square, because it can no longer go to e5 or d4 because we will take this knight with our knight. If it goes back, h takes g4 will become more reasonable. So for this reason, black has to play g takes f3. But after d takes c6, bishop c6 and queen f3, the picture is changed. Now we kept this pawn, which is controlling important square on g4. As well, black's attack is stopped because we exchanged this knight and no one of the black pieces will be able to bother white's position. Rook g8 is not scary because this spot is very safe, and now white is gonna be developing pieces very quickly. After e6, white goes knight c3, bishop e7, bishop f4, and after rook g8, rook a d1. In a few moves, all white pieces are involved in the game, and now as well it's kinda unclear where black king is gonna be located. Black can try to play some kind of long castles after some queen c7 or d7 moves, but white will prepare the central e5 break and will create some threats. So it's already difficult for black to find a safe square for the king. And because of the beginning d5 move, white is creating a very nice counterplay against black's attack. In real, guys, you can always have it in your mind when your opponent is trying to attack you and you don't want to defend. Sometimes you can be looking for some counterattacks in the center or on the opponent's king. Either way, it's gonna be a nice strategy if there is such an option available on the board. Let's now go to the next position. This is a test position for a daily lesson maneuvering the mighty queen. It's white to move here. Our queen on a4 is making a nice pressure on the weakened black pawn. But as we know, this game is about the king, and black king is kinda weakened right now. So it would be really very smart to transfer our queen instantly to the king side. There is one excellent square for this, and the square is d1. This queen is now gonna go either to f3, g4 or h5, depending on black's reaction. For example, if black ignores all the threats and is deciding to take the pawn with queen b2, white can play rook b1, firstly putting the rook on the open file, and after queen a2 just play queen f3. Now queen f7 check is unstoppable, so after h6, queen f7 check, king d8, white is playing rook b7. Here is why we decided to play rook b1 move at the beginning of this variation. So this king is gonna be checkmated very soon. Black cannot be taking because bishop g5 is leading to a checkmate as well. So after queen d1, black cannot be taking the pawn. Let's see what will happen if black decides to bother this knight's position on g5. h6, and now we are playing queen h5 check. g6 and queen h3. The thing is that now this rook is under a pin, so black cannot take on g5, and as well we transferred our queen from h4 square to h3, closer to black king. Now they are attacking this pawn on e6, and after king e7 we are aiming with our next piece against black king, playing rook e1. So this is a very big advantage for white. Now we are threatening to take on e6, to remove the bishop and just destroy black's king's position. So with a very smart transfer of the queen, white is obtaining big advantage. Let's now change this position. This is a test position for a daily lesson to include h4, h5 in a position. Obviously, here we just need to figure out whether with white we make more value including h4 than black including h5. What do we gain? We gain this g5 square and give away g4 square. We're assuming that our knight is gonna go to knight d2, knight f3 and knight g5 in the future. But at the same time, black is gonna go to knight d7, knight f6 and knight g4. So both knights are gaining squares on g5 and on g4. For this reason, we're not making a value out of h4 and h5 maneuver. The purpose of this test position was to show that sometimes this includement is not good. And always we need to compare what do we gain and what do we give away. So here we don't have any value in this. Let's now go to the next position. This is a test position for a daily lesson to include h4, f5, and this is part 2 of this daily lesson. Again, we have a situation where we're trying to figure out whether h4 and h5 is gonna be good for white or not. First of all, let's simply take a look at the position. All the position is absolutely similar. So the easiest conclusion is that this square on g5 is gonna be absolutely equal to square on g4. So we gained this one and gave away the one on g4. So again, this g4, g5 included is not gonna be bringing any value and it's absolutely equal for both of the sides. Let's now go ahead, guys, to the next position. This is a test position for a daily lesson. Opponent avoids opening theory. What to do, guys? So the last move of black was knight h6. Black is ignoring the usual development and is taking knight to the side of the board. We instantly need to figure out what is the weakness of this, because usually when our opponent is playing something unknown or rare, that means it should be logical. So let's find the logic behind this. This knight is blocking the pawn on h7 square, and this means that now we're gonna get h4 opportunity, because black is no longer able to play h5. And after d6, t3, let's say rook b8, we can be playing h5, and now we have a huge pressure on this side of the board. It's really difficult for black to do something, and we're gonna get very nice options. If black goes knight to f5, we'll be able to play h6 and then bother this bishop. Or if black is trying to keep this knight on h6 and for example playing bishop d7, we're having here very nice option. We can be playing bishop takes h6, bishop takes, pawn takes g6. Now this bishop is hanging, so black has to play h takes g6. And with another strong move, queen to c1. If black is taking the queen, we will take on h8, and it's a very beautiful checkmate. So after bishop g7, rook h8, bishop h8 and queen h6, white is gaining a very big advantage. This king will experience soon big problems because of position of white queen on the king side. So that's how we're trying to react against unknown moves of opponents in the openings. Try to figure out the weakness and then try to use it. Let's now go ahead to the next position. This is a test position for daily lesson, a modern rook. In this position, it's a white to move. We have two pieces versus the rook. Our king is a little bit weakened, and as well now we need to activate our rook. We can play rook c1, but first of all, our rook is not going to be doing much because it's covered by the knight. Secondly, since our king is weakened, it would be smarter if we try to surround our king with our pieces. That is the reason we are playing rook a4. When you are having such an option, you should always pay attention to this development of the rook. Now, if black is trying to play rook d8, we can play rook e4, queen d6, queen d4. All our pieces are centralized very well. Rook from a1 square in a few moves became very strong on the e4. If black tries to go rook e8, we can go knight f4, and after takes, take with a knight with a tempo, since d5 is already protected, and try to push the d-pawn. If after rook a4, first move, black is playing f5, trying to limit rook e4 options. This f5 move is weakening this square, so now white is just playing knight f4 and using this strong outpost created on e6. So with the first rook a4 move, white is very well activating the rook. Let's now change the position. This is a test for a daily lesson. What would Vaganian play? In this position is black to move, and white king is in a suspicious spot. If we slow down, make couple of slow moves, white will be on time to play h3, king h2, or king f2, rook f1, king g1. Most probably white will play with h3. This means we don't have a time to be slow. And instantly, black is trying to ruin the position of white king, playing g5. As we know, we need to open lines in front of opponent's king in order to attack. If white now is playing e takes f6, we can play gf4, knight f4, knight f6. Next threat is going to be rook g8, we will be able to play queen c7, bishop d6, and a huge pressure on this king's position. After g5, if white is taking on g5, we can take on e5. That's correct, the g file is going to be closed now, but instead we're taking a huge control over the center, and again we'll be able to use some lines to attack on this king. So for this reason, after g5, white is trying to play rook e1 with an idea to run away with the king. But it's not gonna be the case. We're taking cd4 now. Obviously we need to open as more lines as possible. If white now takes c takes d4, we can play gf4, knight f4 and take on e5. And the thing is that after d5, now this diagonal is opened first of all, and secondly, black can play knight c5 with a simple idea, bishop d7 and long castle. After that, this king will be in a very sad spot, because even if it managed to run away, this g file will be opened, and with the support of other pieces, black will create a very strong attack. After cd4, white can try knight ed4, but this is leading to some material loss. After gf4, bishop f4, we just take on e5, and the thing is that after knight e5 and knight e5, white cannot take bishop e5, because after takes and rook e5, this rook will be pinned with bishop d6 and will be lost eventually. So after knight e5, white takes rook e5, which is losing an exchange. So after knight takes, bishop takes, rook g8 check, and king h3, rook g5, taking away this square from white queen, so we're preventing all the checks, as well attacking the bishop, and if it goes back somewhere, we'll have e5 check as well. This is the way how black is obtaining a big advantage with the beginning g5 move. So whenever you see your opponent king in such a suspicious spot, and you have such a nice option, always think about it. Let's now go ahead to the next position. This is a test position for a daily lesson, Vladimir Akopian's rule in attack. Here white is trying to attack black king with a pawn mount on the king side, trying to push and open this king's position. Meanwhile, black has a very strong bishop on f6, it's aiming for a knight on c3, it may be crushing white's king pawn structure. Also, it's really difficult to activate these pieces into the game. If we try to take somehow, black will be just taking back and probably will have a solid position nearer to the king. This means we need to involve more pieces, and here white is playing very strong e5 move. The idea is the following, that after d5 we're obtaining very strong square on e4 for our knight, playing just knight e4 in this position. And after bishop e7 we already start crushing black's king. What has happened? In a few moves we brought our knight to e4, this strong bishop retreated back, and only for a pawn. So while attacking, this is a very little price even to think about it. And here let's see how this attack is going on. After gf7, king f7, we play f takes e5, trying to open up all the lines. If black now is playing knight takes e5, we can go bishop d4. It's a very strong move, bringing bishop into the attack. Right now we're threatening to take on e5, and d7 will be hanging, and after rook bd8, just playing bishop g2 check, king g8 and queen g3. Threats are decisive, knight on e5 is hanging, if it retreats back the queen is hanging, but most importantly there is a checkmate on g7. So black is losing. After f takes e5, if black is trying to run away with the king, we are already good to aim for this pawn on g7, because there is no longer bishop on f6. Going rook g1, bishop f8, bishop h6. We are trying to increase this pressure over the g7 square. Rook f7 and rook takes g7, beautiful tactical solution. After rook g7, we are just playing rook g1. Now black cannot be taken because queen g1 and queen g7 will be leading to a checkmate. So bishop f8, and the rest is very simple. Bishop takes, and just h6. Gonna be winning back the missing piece and crushing black's king. After knight e5 and rook g7, it's gonna be a checkmate. If black goes king f8, we can play bishop h5 check. This king is now trapped. It's not having any squares, so it's gonna be a checkmate in the next move. Or if after rook g7, black can go king h8, we can even blunder our queen here, playing knight f6. The thing is that after knight d3 check, king b1 and knight takes f2, rook h7 is a very beautiful checkmate. So that's how we're winning the game, with a very important e5 move in the beginning, sacrificing a pawn and activating our pieces. Let's now change this position. This is a test for a daily lesson with a funny name, playing ugly can give you an advantage. In this position it's white to move, and we're playing f4. You may say, wow, ugly, leaving pawn on e3 behind others, creating this strong outpost. But the thing is, f5 move is a very big threat, it's going to be taking one of the pieces, and the problem for black is they cannot save it. So the only way to do it is to give a pawn, playing f5. If we take now, after takes and b5 move, black is moving this knight back, and later on after knight c3 taking queen e3 check, winning back the pawn. So for this reason, after f5, white is going knight g3, increasing pressure on this pawn, meanwhile protecting the pawn on e3. So after knight h4, we are just simply able to win the pawn, taking knight f5, takes bishop f5, bishop f5 and queen f5. Sometimes we need to pay attention to ugly moves like f4, which can really bring us some different type of advantages. So check many options you are having over the board. Let's now change the position. This is a test position for the daily lesson, entry squares for the queen. White here is having a big advantage, very strong passed pawn on c6, gonna go to c7 and make a big pressure on black's position. But for a second, ignoring this strong pawn, we're having even a better option, and the key is h7 square, because the king of black is not located on g8 as it's happening usually, but is on f8. So white is playing first move queen d3. It can be considered as a double attack. We're attacking rook on e2 and as well square on h7. So rook is going to h2, and after queen h7 white is just winning. Almost all the moves are leading to decisive advantage. If bishop f6, we play bishop d6 check, bishop b7 and queen h8 checkmate. If after queen h7 black goes bishop b4, we go rook d7, taking control over this square, and again queen h8 will be winning. After queen h7, if black is trying to play f6, we can go rook d7 again, and black will be in huge trouble in a few moves. After rook a5, we are making beautiful rook e7 move. If black is playing rook takes e7, queen h8 is winning this queen, or if black goes king e7, we take queen g7 check and the further mate on d7 square. So after queen h7, only move left we didn't cover is f5, but this is also losing because of bishop e5 and threats on g7 are unstoppable. After bishop f6, white just can play rook to d7 and queen h8 is coming. Very simple and beautiful idea related to the first queen d3 move, double attacking the rook and h7 square. Let's now go ahead to the next position. This is a test for a daily lesson, exchange the queens or not. It's black to move here. We can be trading off the queens or keep them on the board. If we play queen a5, rook a5 and rook b8, white is getting an equality through d5, bishop e5 and knight d4. We have bishop pair advantage, but this knight is making a big pressure on the weak pawn on c6, so if we try to go for a passive defense, white may even increase the pressure. That means we have to take, and after takes it will just be alright for white. Meanwhile, instead of first mistake queen a5, black can play much smarter. Let's first of all take a look at white's king's position. Pawns are a little bit advanced, some squares are weakened, as well we're having dark squared bishop, and dark squared are weakened. So this means if we keep the queen on the board and play queen e7, this would be really dangerous. After something like rook e1, we can instantly activate all of our pieces, playing bishop h4, rook e2 and bishop d3. Now we're slowly increasing tension over the white king, bringing our pieces close. And after rook d2, bishop c4, black is obtaining a decisive advantage. The thing is now knight is hanging, and with the next e takes d4 move, we're going to be opening the e file and bother this king a lot. So this would be winning for black. In situations when your opponent's king is weakened, queens on the board are very important. So that's how you figure out whether you need the queens or you don't. Let's now change this position. This is a test position for the daily lesson, don't play chess on autopilot. It's black to move, and obviously we just can take back queen b5, and after a queen c3 just played this very close to equal position. White is protecting all the pawns. Meanwhile, if we, instead of queen b5 move, try to go a little deeper into the position, we'll be able to figure out a stronger opportunity. Here, Black is able to take knight c5. What's the trick? We're leaving this knight under attack, attacking this knight as well. White cannot be taking knight d5 because queen is under attack. As well, white cannot be taking with the pawn because this pawn is also pinned and queen will be locked. So basically, with the knight c5 move, black is just winning a pawn. After queen a2, knight b3, queen a8 check and king h7, black is just keeping the extra pawn. After queen takes c6, we are playing queen e1 check and king h2, knight d2. So this was the reason it was really dangerous to take this pawn on c6, and now we're going to create very decisive threats over the white king. So because all of this happening here, first knight c5 move was winning a pawn, and later on black is winning the game. Let's now change this position again. This is a test for the daily lesson Counterattack in defense. This is a very interesting position. White is having good pieces aiming for opponent's king and are trying to bother us with g5 move. We're gonna be too slow if we try to bring more pieces over the king, and we should be looking for the counterattack, because white king is also in the center. All of this means that here black is having a very strong breakthrough in a center, playing d4. Now de3 threat is a very strong one, and white has to accept the sacrifice. So we play knight d4, cd4 and queen d4. And after king e2, there are several options, but in a concrete way, black is obtaining a big advantage. We're able to play queen takes b2, and now this bishop is under attack. And after rook ac1, we can play c3. So we want to take on d2, with a tempo we'll be attacking the rook as well. That means white has to play knight b3, and here we're on time for bishop b4, including more pieces into this. This bishop is under attack now. This bishop is as well protecting the king side, so black will be able to bring more pieces and bother white's position. King is in the center, queen is now not on a good spot because it's too far from the king. So with this very interesting counterattack in the center, instead of defense, black is obtaining a very strong attack. Let's now change this position again. This is a test position for the daily lesson playing flexible chess moves. In this position, black is pawn down, but there is very interesting dynamics. With concrete actions, we may force white to get a very difficult spot. If we now play bishop c4 check, white will go king e3, rook e8, king e4. We don't obtain anything with bishop c4 move. The same applies to the first bishop g4 move as well, so white just can be playing with f3 and we don't have much. Instead of all of these moves, we're having first very strong rook e8, creating many threats at the first move of black. Now we want to play bishop takes b3 with a check, bishop d5 check winning the rook on h1, and some other discovery checks. For example, if white is going king f3, we have bishop d5 and we're winning this rook. If white is going rook h1, we can take bishop b3 check and we're winning this piece. So it turns out that white is not having much options left, and white can go king f1. Here black is having a pleasant choice of playing either bishop h3 check, and after king g1 rook e2, now we're activating the pieces, this rook is stuck on h1, and regardless of the absence of pawn, black is going to be winning here. Or instead of bishop h3 move, black can be playing bishop c4 as well in this position. The thing is, if now white goes king g1, we trap this rook with bishop d5 move, or after king g2 we can be playing bishop d5 check, f3 and rook e2 check. And again we're going to be winning. After king g1, bishop f3 is leading to a big advantage of black. So sometimes instead of playing some concrete moves, we should be taking some flexible decisions. Let's now go ahead to the next one. This is a test position for the daily lesson how to crush through with your attack. It's white to move, we're a pawn up here. But let's pay attention at the white pieces. Our bishops, knights, queen and the rook as well are all very close or having a big potential to bother this king. we can be activating our pieces differently, but there is a concrete way, and as you know, the defense of Black King now is supported only by the pawns. So first of all, we need to get rid of the pawns. This will be weakening many squares nearer to the king. So that means, in the first position we are playing knight takes g7, king g7 and queen e3. Now we are looking for a queen h6 check with some decisive threats taking the pawns and checkmating. Black can try two options here, playing f5 and covering this diagonal, so this is blocking our bishop abilities. Obviously, we are going to take, bishop takes and queen h6, king f7 and queen h7. All pieces are gonna go next to the black king in a very near future, so it's gonna be almost a quick checkmate. Bishop g7, knight g5 check, king f8, and suddenly bishop is coming from another side, bishop a3. This move is not obtaining much, but after rook e7, it's taking all the squares of black king, and with bishop g6, now we are threatening to play just knight e6. This rook is under a pin, this square is taken, this square is taken. As well, if black is somehow deciding to protect this pawn on e6, we will have very beautiful bishop f7 and queen g8 idea. So this is winning in this case, and after queen e3, black is not able to play f5. If black is going rook h8, now we have queen h6 check, king g8. This king is very sad, especially in conditions when rook is on h8. So it's taking all the squares, but rook has to be here because h7 pawn now is protected. We are continuing our attack and bringing more pieces, playing knight g5, bishop g5, bishop takes g5. We are planning to play bishop f6 and queen g5 or queen g7 checkmate. The last try of black is queen f8 move, but we are simply ignoring this and not trading of the queens, just playing queen h5. We are planning to play bishop f6 or h6 and bring our rook into the attack, which will be finalizing the game to white's favor. In a very beautiful way, white is attacking, and if you are having many pieces near to your opponent king, you can always have this kind of ideas in your mind. Let's now change this position, going to the next one. This is a test position for the daily lessons important tactical pattern. It's white to move. Instantly, we can feel that bishop on f6 is not protected. That means we may have some concrete tactical ideas here. Obviously, before going for it, we need to make sure everything is very precisely calculated. Let's see what was the very beautiful and correct line in this position. So white is going d5, and black cannot take here because this bishop is hanging. So black has to play bishop takes b2, d takes c6. Now if black is taking on c6, we will just grab the bishop on b2 square. That's why black has to continue queen d2. And now, instead of taking the queen, here it comes. We are taking pawn takes b7. If now black takes on a1, we'll just take on a8, promote a queen, and stay with an extra piece. For this reason, black is not taking on a1, but playing queen d5 back, trying to protect this rook on a8, so after takes, black will just take back, and it will be a little unclear position, with an extra advantage for black. For this reason, in this position, white is playing very strong knight h4 move. We are keeping this queen under attack, meanwhile we are threatening to take it and go b takes a8 queen. For this reason, black has to get rid of this pawn. But the thing is that after queen takes b7, bishop takes, bishop a1 and bishop a8, white is staying with an extra piece versus the pawn. So this is a clear winning idea. Before going for such a complicated things like d5, you need to make sure, guys, that you calculated everything precisely. And if it works, just do a beautiful move and win a beautiful game. Let's go ahead, changing this position again. This is a test position for the daily lesson reversed chess battery. In this position is black to move. Pawn on e5 is hanging and black plays queen d6. Now we need to increase our pressure over this pawn and try to win it. If we do it with queen in front of the bishop, like in the variation queen c1, black will have a very creative defense, knight c7, queen c3, knight a6, knight e5. You may say, okay, we won the pawn. But the thing is, queen is in front of the bishop, so we are not threatening to remove this knight because this bishop is attacking our queen. And suddenly here, black is playing knight b8, and black is even gonna be winning with knight d7 move. So, for this reason, at the beginning, instead of playing queen c1, we are supposed to put our queen behind the bishop. We are playing in this position rook a2, e6, and queen a1 now. And here it comes. Now queen is behind the bishop and we're comfortably gonna be taking with knight on e5. As well, we have an option to take with bishop on e5. So after all of this, ed5 and ed5, white is winning the pawn on e5 and gaining a winning advantage. So in some times we are having to use this reversed battery. Let's now change this position again. This is a test for the daily lesson active moves versus passive moves. In this position is white to move, and our pawn on d3 is hanging. We need to decide how to play. If we try to go knight to e4, black will go knight d5, and the thing is that knight will be getting under huge tempos after f5. c3 will be hanging now, and the other pawns will be hanging as well. So knight e4 is too much active for this position, and we are not playing this. If instead of knight e4, we try to play bishop c4, this bishop again will be getting under some attacks. Black can play very simply, going knight d5, attacking pawn on c3. And after bishop d2, black may be playing knight b6, bishop is under attack, and once we touch it, the pawn on d3 will be hanging. So this is not working for white as well. For this reason, at the beginning position, instead of playing bishop c4, we are going to be choosing passive option, playing bishop c2. And now, our bishop is not going to be getting under any kind of attacks. After knight d5, we can go bishop d2. Why we are not going bishop to b2 square? Because there is knight f4 move, and the queen and pawn will be hanging. And after knight b6, white is able to play bishop c1. Yes, it's too passive, and this time we are fighting for equality. But eventually, with the passive move, we are able to keep our pawns safe. So, usually we know that we are looking for the active options, but in some exceptional cases, passive options are gonna be better, guys. Let's now go ahead to the next position. This is a test position for the daily lesson, accept or decline a sacrifice. In this position, white is playing bishop takes h7. And let's try to figure out, can we take or we cannot? After king takes h7, white plays knight g5 check. If we now take after hg5 followed by queen h5, our king will get checkmated. So we have to play king g8. Now queen h5 is coming, and seems that queen h7 will be unstoppable. If we try to go rook e8, white can play queen h7, bishop d6, and checkmate our king through h8 square. So, for this reason, here we're not having defense against queen h7 checkmate. Is it correct? No, guys, it's not, because there is a very important option left for black. We are going to be using position of white king. And very importantly, we have queen a5 check. And after bishop d2, we are on time to bring our queen for the defense. Playing queen f5, and now no longer checkmate on h7, followed by some queen g6, and all the attack is gonna be gone. Meanwhile, black will stay with an extra piece. It's very important, if you are attacking or if you are defending, try to pay attention to such an important maneuvers, because once attacking you may be missing it and losing the game, or if you are the defender side, you may miss this defense and lose in a winning position. Very important, simple and strong maneuver. Let's now change the position. This is a test position for a daily lesson attacking a king using pawn majority. It's white to move here. We're having nice pieces, aiming for opponent's king, our bishops may be activated, our queen is close, but there is some pawn coverage in front of opponent's king. So, the most logical option is to remove these pawns using our own pawns. Now white is playing h4, knight g7 and h5. We are trying to open up the position here. Black plays bishop e8. Now we're not going to take, because in this case black will be able to take with a bishop, and this bad bishop will be exchanged with this strong one. So we're playing h6, creating very dangerous pawn right next to the black king. Here it's happening knight f5, but we're taking bishop f5. Black cannot take with e-pawn because d5 is hanging, so black has to play g takes f5. And here, after bishop a3, rook f7 and bishop d6, white is obtaining a winning position. Black pieces are very bad, we have a very strong pawn on h6, our queen and knight are very close to the black king, we have very nice squares, so in the near future, with easy attack, white will be winning this game. Many dark squares are weakened, so we can bring our queen differently and activate our knight through the h5 square as well. Very simple and strong attack with the beginning h4, h5 idea. Let's go ahead to the next one now. This is a test for the daily lesson how to launch a queenside majority. Now, black is having a very solid positions in the center, but it's not gonna be enough to obtain anything. We have pawn majority, we have strong bishop aiming for white pawns. So, what would be really logical? Just to push our pawns, try to trade off one of them and make a weakness here, because right now those pawns are not hanging. But after a5 move, imagine one day we go a4 and take here, this will already become a weakness. If white now is going a4, this is weakening the pawn on b3. We can play differently, try to improve our pieces positions. There is a beautiful idea, queen e8, knight e7 and queen c6 maneuver. There are different options. If instead of a4, white is going queen e2, we're playing queen c7, bishop h3, knight e7, f4 and the same queen c6. What we have done, we brought our queen to this position, now controlling this diagonal as well. Now we're preparing a4 move. So for example, if here white is playing bishop c3, we just go a4, and after some queen e3 move, this is already a weakness. In this concrete case, black is also able to capture the pawn, so obtaining a big advantage. After queen c6 move, if white is playing queen to g4, we can play knight f5. And what has happened again, we obtained a very nice positions. This a4 move is not played yet, but the threat of it is gonna be really decisive. Now we're threatening knight e3, so white has to go back, queen e2, and we are able to play a4 move again. Because of this beginning a5 idea with this a4 threat all the time, and eventually this move happening on the board is bringing a good advantage for black. Let's now go ahead to the next position. This is gonna be a test position for don't exchange queens in the opening, and we're gonna be covering two different tests. So, the last move of black was d5. Here white has two options. First of all, white can play e takes d5, knight d5, knight takes, queen d5. Queen is going into the center. And here white has knight c6 move. We are able to take pawn c6, and after queen d5, pawn takes d5. That would be a little better for black endgame, because better control over the center and strong bishop. But black is now ahead in development. We have already castled, so it would be way more reasonable to take with the queen. Now, we're having active bishop, active queen, and meanwhile white king is in the center. So, if white is playing c3, we can play bishop f5, bishop e2, rook fd8. On the d file, this queen is getting under some tempos, so for this reason it was really reasonable to keep the queens on the board. As well, because of these pawns, white king on both sides of the board is gonna be feeling uncomfortable. After queen c1, rook d5, castle and rook a8, black is obtaining a huge activity in the center. All the pieces are great, meanwhile all white heavy pieces are very passive. So, for this reason, at the beginning we're keeping the queen in this position with queen c6 move. Now let's go back to d5 move of black in the opening and see what's happening if white is playing differently. Here white can play with knight c6 move as well. Pawn takes, e takes d5, knight takes d5, and knight d5. Here again we're having a choice. Queen d5 will be transposing to the endgame possible previously. But again, here we're taking with the c pawn. We are ahead in development. king is in the center, so we need to have the queen on the board. After c3, we're able to play e5. Bishop e2 playing d4, instantly opening up the position. And after c takes d4, e d4, bishop f4 and bishop f5, black is again having nice activity. Passed pawn in the center. For example, white cannot go bishop d3, because rook e8 check will leave this king without castling option. And as we are having queens on the board, that will really be very dangerous for white. After a castle, we will be able to play d3 and gain a decisive advantage in the center. So for all of these reasons, we are keeping queen as a black side in the opening because we are much ahead in the development. Let's now go ahead to the next example. This is a test position for a daily lesson chess prophylaxis. It's white to move here, but for a second if we imagine it's black to move, black is threatening very unpleasant bishop h3. Now we cannot take because knight f3 is the threat. Otherwise, if we go something like rook e2, black can be taking and taking on f3, so we will have big issues. That means that at the beginning we need to strengthen this pawn structure. We are able to play rook e3 and try to play rook a e1, but the thing is that the rook is already covering this e file, so it will be smarter to play rook a3 now. Because this rook is busy with the e file while trying to involve this rook into the game. Also in future we may transpose to a variation with rook e3. But there is an important difference that, for example, if black is playing rook f8, which is a mistake, now we have bishop e5, queen f7, and because this e3 square is no longer covered with this rook, white is having a winning move, playing queen f4. Now this knight is under attack, but whenever it goes back, the bishop on f5 will be lost. So for this reason, this is not working. And if after first rook a3 move, black is playing bishop h3, we're now able to take it. Because after knight f3, rook takes and queen takes, we're actually not losing anything. So now we gained 2 pieces versus the rook and the pawn. But we're going to be doing this great because we have very important outpost on e5. So here white just can be playing rook f1 and later on play these positions with a little advantage. Again, very importantly, with the first rook a3 move, we are strengthening our pawn structure near to the king. Prophylaxis is very important in chess. Meanwhile, this was the last position for our daily lessons coverage of the March. GM Gabuzyan was here with you. Thank you for watching, liking, and sharing these videos with your friends, guys. We appreciate it a lot. See you next time during our next daily lessons.